The base was buried in snow and silence when the commander's wife arrived. The soldiers saw exactly what they wanted to see. Just another spouse, out of place, irrelevant. They had no idea who she really was. When the attack came at midnight, when trained fighters dismantled their defenses with surgical precision, when communications went dark and guards started falling, she vanished into the frozen darkness. Then a single shot cracked across the ridge. Then another. 8 enemy positions went silent in 12 minutes. Because some women were never what they seemed. And retirement papers don't erase 12 years in naval special warfare. From wherever you're watching, let us know in the comments. And if this story has earned you respect, click like so others can find it too. The outpost sits buried in the mountains like a forgotten thing. Snow presses against the walls, thick and relentless, building in drifts that reach halfway up the concrete barriers. Wind cuts through the wire fencing with a sound like tearing fabric, constant and cold. Nothing moves except the guards' rotating shifts, their breath fogging in the air that bites exposed skin within seconds. This is Forward Operating Base Sentinel, a relay station carved into rock and ice at an elevation where most people would struggle to breathe, where soldiers count days until rotation and pray nothing goes wrong. The base commander, Major David Keller, stands in the operations center, studying weather reports that promise another week of whiteout conditions. The screen glows pale blue in the dim room, casting shadows across his face. He's been here 11 months. 1 more to go. His marriage has survived deployment before, but this rotation has been harder. The isolation, the silence, the way time stretches when there's no enemy to fight, just cold to endure and equipment to maintain, and the slow erosion of purpose that comes from guarding something nobody attacks. When the message comes through that his wife is arriving for a brief visit, approved through proper channels and routed through 3 levels of command authorization, some of the junior officers exchange glances. They've seen this before. Spouses who can't handle the separation, who need reassurance, who make the long journey through dangerous terrain just to feel connected again, to remind themselves why the sacrifice matters. Keller doesn't explain. He just signs the authorization form, notes the arrival time, and waits. The transport arrives 3 days later, tires crunching over frozen ground, exhaust clouding white in the sub-zero air. The vehicle is a reinforced transport, the kind designed for hostile environments, though the only hostility here is the weather. The door opens and Sarah Keller steps out, pulling her jacket tighter against the wind that immediately tries to strip it away. She's 42, unremarkable in civilian winter gear, carrying a single duffel bag that looks light for a week-long stay. No uniform, no rank insignia, no military bearing that anyone can identify. Just a woman visiting her husband in the coldest place either of them has ever been. The soldiers who watch her arrive see exactly what they expect to see. Someone out of place. Someone who doesn't belong in this world of stone and ice and military protocol. Someone who'll spend the visit complaining about the cold and wondering why anyone would volunteer for this assignment. She thanks the driver with a nod, shoulders her bag without difficulty, and walks toward the command building with steady steps that don't slip on the ice. Don't hesitate. Don't show any of the uncertainty they're expecting. Keller meets her at the entrance. They embrace briefly, professionally, aware of the eyes watching from guard towers and windows, aware that displays of affection in a combat zone, even a frozen one, carry implications about favoritism and distraction. He takes her bag, noting its weight, noting the way she released it without the relief most visitors show, and leads her inside, through corridors lit by fluorescent lights that hum constantly, past bulletin boards covered in duty rosters and weather warnings and motivational posters that nobody reads anymore. Their assigned quarters are small but private, one of the few benefits of his rank. A bed, a desk, a narrow window looking out at white mountains that disappear into gray sky. The room is warm, almost stifling after the outside cold, heated by radiators that clank and hiss in the corners. Sarah sets her bag down carefully, not dropping it, not tossing it, and moves to the window, standing there longer than necessary, her gaze tracking the ridgelines, the tree line, the approaches to the base. Keller watches her. He's been married to her for 16 years, and he knows when she's cataloging terrain. He knows when she's measuring distances. He knows the difference between looking and observing, but he doesn't ask. He learned a long time ago that some parts of her work don't have words attached, that some chapters of her life closed before their marriage began, and that privacy is a form of respect. She turns from the window and smiles at him, and for a moment she's just Sarah again, his wife, the woman who sends care packages filled with hot sauce and real coffee and handwritten notes, the woman who handles everything at home while he's deployed, who keeps their life running when he can't be there to help. They talk about ordinary things, their daughter's college applications, the endless essays and campus visits and anxiety about the future, the leak in the garage roof that's getting worse, the dog who keeps escaping the backyard through a hole in the fence that Sarah can't find. Normal life, condensed into a few hours of conversation in a place where normal doesn't exist, where the only reality is cold and routine and waiting. That night, in the officer's mess, Sarah sits with the other spouses and families who've made the journey for brief visits. The room is warm, filled with the smell of coffee and the low hum of conversation. The talk flows around her. Complaints about the cold, about the travel delays, about the security checkpoints and the paperwork, and the absolute inconvenience of loving someone who serves in places like this. Stories about children left with relatives, about jobs put on hold, about the sacrifices that never make it into recruitment videos. Sarah listens more than she speaks. When she does talk, it's about home, about weather, about nothing that matters. Safe topics, comfortable topics, the kind of conversation that fills time without revealing anything. But the young lieutenant across from her, a man named Morrison who's been at Sentinel for 6 months, notices something. The way she holds her coffee cup, fingers positioned for quick release rather than comfort. The way her eyes track movement at the edge of her vision, cataloging everyone who enters the room, everyone who moves behind her. The way she sits with her back never to the door, always positioned where she can see exits, always maintaining what tacticians call situational awareness. He's seen that posture before, in combat veterans, in people who've learned that comfort can be interrupted, that relaxation is a luxury, that vigilance is a survival skill you never unlearn. The next morning, Keller takes Sarah on a tour of the base. Standard protocol for visiting family members, supervised and sanitized. He shows her the operations center, pointing out the banks of monitors that track weather and communications, and the handful of remote sensors positioned on the surrounding peaks. The armory, where weapons are stored in neat rows, locked and inventoried and checked 3 times daily. The vehicle depot, where trucks and snowmobiles sit in various states of readiness, engines kept warm even when not in use because in this climate, a cold engine is a dead engine. Sarah walks beside him, asking polite questions about logistics and supply chains, about how often convoys arrive, about what happens if they're cut off by weather. To everyone they pass, she looks mildly interested, supportive, exactly what a military wife should be, engaged enough to seem caring, detached enough to not interfere. But when they reach the perimeter, when Keller gestures toward the observation posts positioned on the surrounding ridges, elevated platforms where guards scan the approaches in 2-hour shifts before the cold forces rotation, Sarah stops walking. She studies the positions for a long moment. Her gaze moves systematically, tower to tower, gap to gap, blind spot to blind spot. Her eyes trace sight lines, calculate fields of fire, identify dead zones where an attacker could approach unseen. A sergeant nearby, a veteran named Chen who served 3 combat deployments, catches the look. Just for a second, he wonders if she's seeing what he sees, if she's noticing the same vulnerabilities he's reported twice to command, if she understands that the Western Ridge has insufficient coverage, that the sensor grid has predictable patterns, that the base defense plan assumes they'll have warning when warning might not come. Then Sarah smiles and asks about the heating systems in the guard towers, and the moment passes. Chen tells himself he imagined it, that he's been deployed too long, seeing threats in everything, reading tactical knowledge into a simple question. The attack comes on the 3rd night of her visit. No warning, no escalation, no intercepted communications or suspicious movement on the sensors, just silence that suddenly isn't. The communications array goes down first, not damaged, not destroyed, just offline, as if someone knew exactly which relay to interrupt, which frequency to jam, which backup system would fail if the primary went dark. Then the motion sensors along the western perimeter start reporting false positives, dozens of them, overwhelming the system with ghost contacts that ping and vanish and ping again. By the time the duty officer realizes it's not a malfunction, realizes the pattern is too coordinated to be wildlife or weather, the first shots are already being fired. Precision shots. Controlled. 3-round bursts coming from elevated positions in the tree line that shouldn't have anyone in them. Positions that the patrol schedule cleared just 2 hours ago. The base sirens wail, a sound that cuts through the cold and sends soldiers scrambling. Men pour from barracks, pulling on gear, grabbing weapons, moving through drill procedures they've practiced 100 times. But the enemy isn't following the expected pattern. No mass assault, no probing attacks, no RPGs or mortars, no suppressive fire meant to cover an advance. Just methodical shooting from multiple angles, each burst calculated to pin down specific positions, to suppress specific fields of fire, to create exactly the kind of chaos that prevents organized response. Keller reaches the operations center at a run, boots pounding on frozen concrete. The situation board is chaos, reports flooding in from every sector, guard posts under fire. Perimeter breached in 2 locations, maybe 3, the reports conflicting. Enemy strength unknown. Enemy objectives unknown. Everything happening too fast and too coordinated, like someone planned this down to the second, like someone knew exactly where to hit and when. The base defense plan assumed they'd have time. Warning, a chance to call for air support or reinforcements from the larger base 60 miles south. But the weather has closed in. Visibility dropping to near zero. Snow falling so thick it creates a white wall beyond the perimeter. No helicopters, no extraction, no cavalry coming over the ridge. Just them, and whoever's out there in the snow. Whoever's dismantling their defenses with the precision of professionals. Keller orders a head count, shouting over the alarms and the radio chatter and the distant crack of gunfire. Squad leaders report in. Everyone accounted for except Sarah. She's not in their quarters. Not in any of the designated safe areas where non-combatants are supposed to shelter during an attack. Not in the command bunker or the medical station or any of the reinforced positions. One of the junior officers starts to panic, suggesting she might have been taken, might have been caught outside when the attack started, might be wounded or worse. Keller doesn't answer. He's staring at the situation board, at the pattern of incoming fire marked in red, at the way the attack is concentrated on specific choke points, and something cold is settling in his chest that has nothing to do with the temperature, something that feels like recognition. Outside, in the white chaos of falling snow and muzzle flashes, the attack is losing momentum. The enemy fighters who've advanced closest to the wire, who've been laying down suppressive fire and attempting to cut through the fence line, are starting to fall back, not retreating in panic, just repositioning, confused, because their overwatch is gone. The spotter who was calling corrections from the ridge, directing fire, coordinating the assault, is no longer calling anything. The machine gunner who was suppressing the north tower, keeping the defenders' heads down, is silent. The sniper who took out 2 guards in the first 30 seconds has stopped firing. Not killed in firefights. Not taken down by return fire from the base. Just eliminated. Quietly. Precisely. By someone who knows exactly how to dismantle an attack from the outside in. How to remove the key pieces that make coordinated assault possible. In the operations center, a radio crackles. Sarah's voice comes through, calm and level, using proper comm protocols like she's been doing this her entire life, like she knows exactly what information command needs and in what order. Sentinel Actual, this is Overwatch. I have eyes on 8 hostiles. Western Ridge Grid November 7342. Recommend you shift fire to suppress their withdrawal. They're pulling back, but they're not done. They'll regroup if you give them space. Keller takes the handset with hands that have gone numb. Not from cold, from recognition, from understanding something his wife has never told him directly, something he's suspected but never confirmed, never pushed her to explain. Overwatch, what is your position? Her response is immediate, professional, the tone of someone giving a tactical report. Elevated, good coverage of western and northern approaches. Don't worry about me. Focus on the breach points. They're going to try one more push before they abandon this. They've lost too many key personnel to sustain the attack, but they'll commit what they have left, rather than withdraw under fire. She's right. 5 minutes later, the enemy makes a final attempt to penetrate the southern perimeter. It's desperate, uncoordinated. They're missing their leadership, their fire support, their confidence. The fighters advance without covering fire, without the precision that marked the beginning of the attack. The base defenders drive them back with concentrated fire, and then there's nothing. Just wind, just snow, just the sound of soldiers breathing hard and checking ammunition counts and trying to process what just happened. Keller orders a security sweep, every sector, every approach, looking for wounded, for stragglers, for some explanation of what just happened, how an attack that should have overwhelmed them fell apart so completely. They find 8 bodies in the snow, already being covered by fresh fall, already disappearing into the white landscape, not clustered together, spread across 3 different positions, each one a strategic piece of the attack that's now missing. Headshots, center mass shots, made from distances that require training, patience, and a very steady hand. When Sarah walks back through the main gate 40 minutes later, she's carrying a rifle that didn't come from the base armory. It's a custom precision weapon, built for a specific purpose, broken down and slung across her back, snow melting off the stock. Her hands are red from cold but steady. Her breathing is controlled. Her face is calm, showing none of the adrenaline crash that should follow what she just did. She walks past the guards like she's returning from a morning run, not from systematically dismantling an enemy assault, not from killing 8 people in the dark. The young lieutenant, Morrison, is the first to understand. He sees the rifle. He sees the way she moves, economical and precise. He sees the absolute lack of hesitation in her posture, the muscle memory of someone who's done this before, who's done this many times. He'd served with a sniper team in Afghanistan, pulled security while they worked, and he knows what he's looking at. He knows the particular calm that comes after successful shots, the way professionals process what others would call trauma. Keller meets her at the command building. They stand facing each other in the hallway, surrounded by the controlled chaos of post-attack procedures, soldiers running past with damage reports and casualty counts and requests for orders. He doesn't ask where she got the weapon, doesn't ask how she knew where to position herself, doesn't ask about the 8 confirmed kills that just saved his base, saved lives, saved him. He just looks at her, really looks, at the woman he's been married to for 16 years. The woman who sends care packages and handles home repairs and never once mentioned that she used to do this professionally. The woman who just demonstrated capabilities that exist in maybe a few hundred people in the entire military. Sarah meets his eyes. There's no apology in her expression, no explanation, no request for understanding or forgiveness. Just the quiet acknowledgement that he's finally seeing something she's carried in silence for a long time, something she chose not to burden him with, something she left behind when she left the service. "I retired," she says simply, her voice barely above a whisper in the noisy hallway. "I didn't stop being trained." The debriefing happens in the operations center 2 hours later, after the immediate crisis has passed, after the perimeter has been secured, and the bodies have been documented and the damage has been assessed. Senior officers, intelligence personnel, everyone trying to piece together what happened and how a coordinated attack fell apart so completely, so suddenly. Sarah sits at the table with them, still in her winter gear, the custom rifle now broken down and secured, answering questions in a tone that's professional, detached, exact. She describes fields of fire, wind calculations at elevation, target prioritization based on threat assessment. She uses terminology that makes the tactical officers lean forward, suddenly paying attention in a way they didn't when she first arrived, when she was just a spouse, just a visitor, just someone to be polite to and ignore. One of them, a captain named Williams who served in special operations and thinks he knows what elite looks like, finally asks the question everyone's thinking. "Ma'am, what was your service record?" Sarah glances at Keller. He nods. Permission granted. Whatever classification or privacy concerns existed before tonight died when she saved the base. "Navy," she says. "Special Warfare Development Group, Scout Sniper, 12 years active, retired with the rank of Senior Chief. I left before David and I got married. We agreed I wouldn't discuss it." The silence in the room is absolute. Dev grew. The unit most people know by another name. The name that appears in movies and video games and nowhere in official documentation. The unit that doesn't officially exist and doesn't officially deploy, and definitely doesn't train women to be scout snipers, except when it does. And those records disappear into classification levels nobody talks about. The senior intelligence officer, a major named Patterson who spent his career analyzing threat patterns and enemy capabilities, sits back in his chair. He's looking at Sarah like she's a puzzle he completely misread. Like she's been standing in plain sight and he never saw her, never recognized what was obvious in retrospect. "You've been here 3 days, he says slowly, carefully, like he's testing a hypothesis. "You cataloged our defensive weaknesses in 3 days? Sarah shakes her head, a small movement. "I cataloged them in 4 hours. I spent the rest of the time confirming what I'd need if someone attacked, where I could position, what sight lines were available, what the enemy would likely use if they'd done their reconnaissance properly." She stands, moving to the map table, pointing to the positions where enemy bodies were found, where her shots originated, where the attack concentrated. They weren't random fighters. This was a test. Professional reconnaissance in force. They wanted to see how we'd respond, how long it would take reinforcements to arrive, where our gaps are. Someone's planning something bigger and they needed current intelligence on our capabilities. Keller feels the cold settling deeper, spreading from his chest into his limbs. "How do you know?" Sarah's expression doesn't change, but something in her eyes hardens, memory surfacing. "Because that's how I do it. You don't waste a coordinated night assault on a relay station unless you're gathering intelligence for a larger operation." They expected to pull back with minimal contact, maybe 1 or 2 casualties, acceptable losses. They expected to observe and withdraw. They didn't expect anyone to be outside the wire when they started. They didn't expect opposition from an elevated position they hadn't cleared. The intelligence officer is already reaching for a secure line. If she's right, if this was reconnaissance for something larger, then every base in the region needs to know. The threat assessment just changed. The entire operational picture just shifted. Over the next 2 days, Sarah becomes something the base has never had before. An asset, a resource, someone whose knowledge changes how they think about security. She walks the perimeter with the defensive teams, pointing out angles they haven't considered, positions they haven't reinforced, dead zones in their coverage that an experienced attacker would exploit. She reviews their communication protocols and finds 3 vulnerabilities an attacker could exploit. Ways to isolate the base, to prevent calls for help, to create the kind of confusion that makes defense impossible. She sits with the sniper teams, looking at their range cards, their wind calculations, their understanding of how cold affects ballistics at extreme distance. She makes corrections, suggests adjustments, demonstrates techniques they've only read about in manuals written by people who never had to make shots that mattered. The soldiers who mocked her arrival, who saw her as just another spouse taking up space and resources, now watch her with something approaching awe. She doesn't lecture, doesn't boast, doesn't make them feel small for not knowing what she knows. She just demonstrates, quietly and precisely, what 20 years of silence has been hiding, what retirement paperwork can't erase. The young Lieutenant Morrison asks her during one of the defensive briefings why she stopped, why she retired when she was clearly at the top of her capability, when people with her skills are rare and valuable and needed. Sarah considers the question for a long moment, watching snow fall beyond the window. "I got tired," she says finally. And there's something in her voice that makes everyone in the room listen more carefully. Not of the work, of carrying it alone, of being invisible except when I was useful, of existing only in classified reports and redacted files. I wanted a life where people knew me for more than what I could do in the dark. She glances at Keller across the room. I wanted to be someone's wife, someone's mother. I wanted to exist when I wasn't holding a rifle. I wanted conversations that didn't end with, "This never happened." I wanted normal. The lieutenant nods slowly. He understands that. The cost of being excellent at something that requires you to disappear. The price of capabilities that can't be acknowledged. The loneliness of carrying knowledge you can never share. On her last day at the base, before the transport arrives to take her back to civilization, back to the world where she's just Sarah Keller, military spouse, Sarah stands at the perimeter one final time. The mountains stretch white and silent around her, beautiful and lethal in equal measure. Somewhere out there, people are planning something. Somewhere out there, her training is still relevant, still needed. The intelligence reports are already circulating, warnings being issued, defensive postures being adjusted. But not today. Today she's going home to fix the garage roof and argue with the internet company and help her daughter write college essays about overcoming challenges and finding purpose. Today she's going back to invisible. Keller walks up beside her. They stand together, not touching, just present, watching the mountains that nearly became a battlefield. "Did you bring that rifle with you?" he asks quietly. "Or did you know you'd need it?" Sarah smiles slightly, the expression barely visible. "I always bring it," she says, "just in case. You can take the sniper out of the service. You can't take the service out of the sniper. I spent 12 years learning to be prepared for what nobody expects. That doesn't shut off because I signed retirement papers." The transport arrives, engine running, exhaust clouding white in the cold air. She shoulders her duffel bag, the same one she arrived with, the custom rifle broken down and hidden inside civilian clothing, invisible again. She shakes hands with the senior officers, accepts quiet thanks from soldiers who understand what she prevented, what could have happened if she hadn't been here, if she hadn't been who she is. Then she climbs into the vehicle and disappears down the mountain road, back to being invisible, back to being just a military wife. After she's gone, the base settles into new routines. Security protocols updated based on her recommendations. Defensive positions reinforced. Training schedules adjusted to include the techniques she demonstrated. Intelligence reports filed and forwarded up the chain of command. Warnings disseminated. Threat assessments revised. The attack is analyzed in detail. Lessons learned. Recommendations made. But in the guard towers, in the operations center, in the barracks where soldiers talk late into the night when sleep won't come, the story spreads. Not the classified version. Not the official report with redactions and security classifications. The real story. About the woman who showed up as a spouse and left as a legend. About the sniper nobody knew existed until lives depended on her. About the invisible professional who carried excellence in silence until silence was no longer an option. Keller keeps one piece of evidence, something he's not supposed to have, something that violates about 6 different security protocols. A photograph taken by base security cameras during the attack. It shows a figure on the western ridge, barely visible through falling snow, rifle steady, positioned in a way that maximizes coverage while minimizing exposure. You can't see her face, can't identify her through the weather and the darkness and the grain of the image, but he knows. He recognizes the posture, the precision of the position, the professional setup. He keeps the photo in his desk drawer, not as proof but as a reminder that strength doesn't always announce itself, that competence doesn't need recognition to exist, that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who's seen the most, done the most, sacrificed the most. Months later, after his rotation ends and he returns home to the house they've shared for over a decade, to the life they built together, Keller finds Sarah in the garage, standing on a ladder, patching the roof leak she's been complaining about for a year. She's wearing old jeans and a sweatshirt that's seen better days. Her hands are steady as she works, measuring twice, cutting once, doing it right the first time, because that's the only way she knows how to do anything. He watches her for a moment. His wife, the woman who sends care packages, the woman who drove their daughter to soccer practice and handled parent-teacher conferences and kept their life running while he was deployed. The woman who dismantled an enemy assault with 8 precise shots and never mentioned it again, never brought it up, never asked for recognition or thanks or acknowledgement. She glances down at him, sensing his presence. "You going to help or just supervise?" He climbs the ladder. They work together in comfortable silence, fixing the leak, cleaning gutters, handling the ordinary maintenance of ordinary life. But now he sees her differently, not because she's changed. She's exactly who she's always been, because he finally understands what he's been looking at all along. Competence doesn't need a stage. Excellence doesn't require an audience. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who choose invisibility, who carry their capabilities quietly, who only show what they are when lives are at stake and there's no one else who can do what needs doing. That night, after their daughter has gone to bed, after the house has settled into the quiet rhythms of civilian life, Sarah sits at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Keller joins her, coffee in hand. the comfortable ritual they've maintained through deployments and reunions and all the years between. "Do you miss it?" he asks. She thinks about that, about the ridge, about the snow, about the absolute clarity of purpose that comes with a rifle and a target, and the knowledge that you're the only thing standing between chaos and catastrophe, about the way training takes over, muscle memory and calculated breathing and the mathematics of wind and distance and gravity. "Sometimes," she admits, and there's honesty in the word, "but I chose this. I chose you. I chose normal. I chose a life where I'm Sarah, not senior chief, not Overwatch, not a classified file number. And most days that's enough." "Most days?" She smiles, the expression genuine now, unguarded. "Some days I still keep my skills sharp, just in case. There's a range about 40 miles from here. I go once a month. The owner thinks I'm a hobbyist. He has no idea why I'm actually there, what I'm maintaining. He just knows I never miss." Keller thinks about the 8 enemy fighters who learned too late that retirement doesn't mean incapable, that civilian doesn't mean harmless, that the most dangerous opponent is the one you never see coming, the one who appears unthreatening until the moment precision becomes necessary. "Just in case," he echoes. They sit together in the warm kitchen, in the house they've built together, in the life they've chosen despite the alternatives, despite the paths not taken. Outside, the world continues. Threats develop. Conflicts emerge. Somewhere, someone is planning something. But tonight, the woman who can dismantle those plans is drinking tea and discussing college applications and worrying about whether their daughter is ready for the independence that comes with university life. Tonight, the invisible professional is exactly where she wants to be. And if tomorrow requires something different, if tomorrow demands that she pick up a rifle and remember what she spent 12 years perfecting, she'll be ready. She's always ready. She just doesn't need anyone to know it until the moment arrives. That's the thing about true strength, Keller realizes, watching her across the table. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need the world to acknowledge what it is. It just needs to exist, quiet, steady, invisible until necessary, and then, when necessary, absolutely lethal.